Hello, everyone. I'm Ken Hanson, an associate professor in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry at Florida State University, also known as Vastib, and this is our speedrun tutorial for NARC. So just a bit of a backstory. This was one of the games I played in my childhood. I played it once on stream, and then it sort of became a running gag on Ask a Scientist Gaming to make every single PhD guest play NARC at the end of the night. And then ultimately it transitioned to a challenge to speedrun the game as fast as we can, and then gradually turned into an obsession where, with the help of one of my moderators, we did tool-assisted speedruns and figured out some of the logistics of the game. And so here's a tutorial. This should help you get the game in under 9 minutes and 30 seconds. Theoretically, with these strategies, a sub 9-minute run is definitely possible. The task is at 8 minutes and 44 seconds. The speedrun sum of best times for me is under 9 minutes as well. So it is definitely feasible. The current record is about 9 minutes and 4 seconds. That's by Super Pitfro. But yeah, without further ado, this is NARC. So let's get started. Right, so here we're starting at the Junkyard, and speedrun timer starts when you touch the ground and gain control of your character. And so before diving into the speedrun, just starting out a few logistical aspects of this game first, just outlining some of the content. So the first thing you should know about the game is that this was originally released for the arcade in 1988 and then ported to the NES in 1989 by Rare and released by Acclaim Entertainment. The problem was the arcade game had 4 buttons and the Nintendo system only has 2 buttons, A and B. And so what the developers did to deal with that is they turned 2 buttons into 4 buttons by tapping B, jumps, holding B, squats, tapping A is a rocket, holding A is bullets. And so you basically have, for the jump, the first 1 to 7 frames, if you tap in a 7-frame window, which in this case is about 115 milliseconds, you do a jump. Anything longer than that, you end up squatting. So 8 frames and above, you squat at the 11th frame and you stay squatted and walk slower. With rockets, the first 5 frames, you can do the rocket, and that's about 83 milliseconds. Interestingly, 6th frame does nothing, and then the 7th and beyond does bullets. And so one thing to note, in the top left corner, you can see the number of bullets. In this case is 99. The number of rockets is 5. I'm using Game Genie codes just so I don't have to worry about losing rockets or bullets. Fun factoid, you can have over 99 bullets. It won't display it, but you can have something like 2,000. However, with rockets at most, you can have 99. For the speedrun, you only realistically need about 10 rockets. Theoretically, you could do it with 5, but you need something on the order of 10. And so something to note when I'm talking about frames in this game, this is a 60 frame per second game, and so you can actually do the math from frames to actual time intervals. And so the other thing to note at the top of the bar is the life bar, which is those 5 blue bars plus the little helmets underneath. Those are the number of lives you have. And so obviously you care about those while you're playing the game. And so the general theme of this game, almost the entirety of it, is go right, find a card, find a door, go through the door, and that's how you beat levels. There's no incentive to kill the guys unless you want points and get extra lives, but in the speedrun, you're just going right as fast as you can. And so one of the things to be aware of about that is every time you get shot, it slows you down. And so I'll jump in the lane here. You can see every time I get shot, it stops me from moving forward or backward. And so it turns out if you do the math, it's about every 8 shots slows you down 1 second. And so ultimately the goal in this game is go right, avoid bullets. Each bullet costs you 7 frames. About 8 of those hits cost you about 1 second and 2 health bars. And so ultimately you want to avoid bullets as much as possible. And so that'll be a consistent theme throughout this entire tutorial. And so one interesting thing to note about this, starting this level in particular is, well, any level in the game, is that essentially there are 4 bad guy or enemy slots in the game. And so at any given time, the most you'll have on the screen is 4, but usually it stays about 3 and they don't fill that 4th slot. The 4th gets filled by either Kinky Pinky, the clown with a knife, or Joe Rockhead. Sometimes you'll get these guys to spawn if 2 of them spawn simultaneously, but for the most part, there's only going to be 3 guys on screen at any given time. The other thing to note about that is most of the bad guys have what I describe as lanes, and so you can see all 3 of the guys on the screen right now. They are walking a very particular path, and it turns out they cannot shoot me when they're in this path. And so a good portion of the characters in this game will never actually shoot you if you're not in their particular lane. And so I'm completely safe from getting shot right now, and I can simply wander to the right and eventually go off screen. But every once in a while, we'll get one guy to spawn that wanders around the screen. And then in this case, we're going to describe this as the y-axis. And so left, right is x-axis, up and down is the y-axis. And so there are a few characters that travel up and down the y-axis, and we'll figure out how to deal with them in a little bit. But again, the idea is essentially you want to walk right and just maintain that and eventually get to a door at the end. One thing to note is that when you go up and down, even if you're holding right and up, it still takes time. And so you go about half speed every time you go up and down. And so ultimately you want to stay going right as much as possible, and then only go up when you need to get to a door, which is typically at the top of the screen. Going back to the start, speedrun starts right here. One strategy is to walk to the right, but if you have one of these y-axis wanderers, one thing you have to be aware of is they can shoot you when they get in your lane. And so that's a non-zero risk, especially if they shoot you really close, because they'll unload several bullets in you. And so my general strategy on this first level is, rather than just walk to the right, I move up just a little bit, about halfway between the sidewalk and the center line of the road, the dividing line. And what that allows me to do is, as I walk to the right, I can immediately kill that y-axis wanderer. And so this does two things. It gets rid of essentially any potential damage they would cause or anything they would do to slow me down. I can immediately kill them. The other thing is I can shoot them and potentially they'll drop bullets or rockets. And rockets in particular, you need at least one rocket pickup. Usually what I do when I get to the door is I jump, because you typically can't get shot while you're in the air jumping. So I'll jump and enter the door as quickly as I can. So when you enter the pipeline, you're going to have a similar strategy. You're going to want to hit a lane where these guys can't shoot you. And so it spawns you essentially on this white line, which is essentially on the middle lane. If you go down just a little bit, about halfway between the white line and the bottom of the screen, this is another safe lane. And so this going down actually sacrifices time. In this case, it's like 1/8 of a second, but it also makes it so I'm in a safe lane where those two guys can't hit me at all. The Y Wanderer can hit me, but I'm going to shoot them along the way. And so the idea is to find this sweet spot lane where none of these three guys can hit me, and that I can shoot those Y wanderers that go up and down. So we'll show this again, just finding a sweet spot, middle of the lane here. Wanderer, shoot the Y wanderers. We're going to go up, hit the card, and essentially jump. So as soon as someone off screens, you can have dogs appear, you can have guys appear in front of you. We're back here in the junkyard. The fastest strategy is to go to the right, jump over the bullets, which is non-trivial if they spawn at the top of the screen, and go right as quickly as you can and find the key door. That works if the spawns are relatively limited. But if you start having people spawn in front of you on top and behind you on top, you definitely risk getting shot multiple times. One strategy I do to deal with this is I essentially walk down to that lane that's safe. This costs you an inherent half a second due to the downward motion and upward motion you have to pay at the end, but ultimately it's a safer route. And so if you're looking at consistency and mitigating risk, most of the times I can go through the entire first level getting hit maybe once or twice. And if you're trying to do a deathless run, I'd argue it's worth that half a second, because a death will ultimately cost you about 1.5 seconds. The key card at the end, the hitbox, is almost adjacent to the door. And so essentially in one motion, you can basically get the key card and go inside that door. And if you do everything right, you can get this in typically 44 seconds. The task is 43 seconds if you go top route and not shot at all. Right, now we're off to KWAK Street. KWAK, just a fun side note, is when they ported this to NES, they decided to remove all reference to drugs, and so crack was replaced with quack, which makes it okay under NES rules. And so yeah, we are on KWAK Street, and we're introduced to this character here, the one dressed in black. That's Dr. Spikerush, also known as Hypo Man. According to NES manual lore, he is a chemist that likes to sell drugs and use them as weapons. And so this is Hypo Man who throws syringes at you. One thing to note is every time one of these syringes hit you, it costs you 1/2 second plus a block of life. And so it is a non-trivial hit when these get to you. You can see if you go halfway up to the center line, you effectively avoid the same issue, the Y Wanderer, and you can just jump over every time they throw a syringe. So anytime you see them hit a knee, basically hitting the jump button, then you're going to entirely avoid their syringes. And so you're going to walk to the right and eventually not have to deal with any more guys. One interesting side note about this is sometimes you'll have a helicopter spawn here. What ends up happening is somewhere at about this point in the screen, there's a spawn check that basically the game asks, is there any bad guys on the screen? If there's no enemies, then that helicopter will actually spawn at the end. And so this helicopter will come back on the bridge. The idea behind the helicopter is just jump over and get out the door. All right, so now we're into the KWAK stop. And so this is unfortunately the spot where most speedruns die. And I'll explain why in a second, but same idea, jump over the syringes, I just walk straight to the right. Here, there's a blue safe card that you need. So before entering this door, you need to put a safe card in and get through the door. And this safe card only drops from one of these, from the Hypo Man. So this guy dressed in black, eventually one will lose a card. And so there's a restriction on where you can actually get this card. It's basically this area from this green vat here, down here, over to this green blue vat over here. You have to shoot the Hypo Man somewhere in that region. The other qualifier is it can't be the one at the bottom. He doesn't drop the blue card at all. It has to be one of these guys up here, and you have about a 1 in 4 chance of them dropping that blue card. And the other thing, the other qualifier is you have to shoot them from a proximity of something like this. Otherwise, shooting them too far away, they won't actually drop the blue card. And so I don't know what dictates that, but it's basically some kind of range detector that'll come back later as well. And so the idea is you need to shoot these guys, get an RNG blue card drop, which is about a 1 in 4, as fast as you can. And so, like I said, this is one of the levels where most of the speedruns die, and the answer is just RNG. Does that blue card drop or not? And do you have a Hypo Man that spawns by the door? And so your ideal scenario is Hypo Man spawns right here, you kill him, blue card there, and then you go out the door. One thing I like to do to increase my odds of getting a Hypo Man and a blue card near the door is after this initial grouping of syringes and jumping over everything, I'll kill the characters on screen here in the hopes that it'll spawn more Hypo Men near the door and increase the probability of getting that blue card. And ultimately, if you get it fast as possible, you'll get through that door somewhere about 1 minute and 40 seconds, or the task does it in 1 minute and 38 seconds. We're onto the bridge. So the bridge is the longest level in the game by far. It takes up about a quarter of the entire speed run. And so one point of reference I'm going to give for this entire level is the post number. And so if we look overhead, you can see essentially a light post right here. We're going to count this as post 1, this post 2, this post 3, so on and so forth. And so we're going to start at post 1 and we're going to use that as our reference system. And so if you just walk to the right and stay in your lane and avoid all the bullets, the car will spawn at either somewhere between post 11 and post 22. And so if you get it at post 11, great. If you get it at post 22, you've lost essentially 15 seconds of time and your speed run is dead. And so if you just walk to the right, you rely on RNG, the car will spawn at any point. But one thing we use to manipulate the RNG is how that car actually spawns. And so what the game does is at post about 8.5, it does a enemy check. And so that enemy check says how many enemies are on the screen. The car occupies more than 3 slots, and so essentially there must be no enemies on the screen at post 8.5 or between post 8 and 9, and then the car will spawn at post 11. And so we're starting here at post 1, post 2, 3, 4, jumping over bullets, 5, 6, 7, 8.5. And so because there's guys on the screen, the car will not spawn until after these guys have been defeated. And so if you eliminate the guys from the screen, then it'll do a spawn check, and then the car will appear at post 11. So a few notes about the car can go forward and backwards, up and down. You don't lose any forward momentum by going up and down. You can actually press select and go backwards, and that doesn't change your momentum at all. You can also shoot rockets and bullets, but there's no need on the speed run at least. And essentially you want to go right as quickly as possible. And so a few notes on that, you're going to run into some barriers. And so if you get in the car at post 11, you're essentially going to have a 3 count, 2, 3, and then you hit that wall. And so there's a wall right there that's dumpsters. You want to be at the bottom of the screen to avoid those. And then there's going to be a grouping of 3 mines. And then as you go further right, there's going to be 3 mines that are set at a particular x-axis on the screen, but the y position as far as we know is random. And so at post 29.5, you're going to run into another bomb. At post 31.5, you're going to run into a second bomb. And then at post 35.5, there's the 3rd mine. And so those can appear, as far as we can tell, anywhere on the y-axis. The other thing you're going to potentially run into, and you saw him there, the blue guy, that is Joe Rockhead, who is aka Dumpster Man, who's a PCP addict that can entirely stop the momentum of a car with his body. And so I'm holding right, and he is completely stopping me. So you need to get around him in order to get to the right, and then you're ultimately going to hit this wall at 36.5 posts. One thing to note about entering the car is you can actually jump in somewhere right about here and still enter the car. And so what that means for if you're walking from a distance, you can actually enter there and get in the car as quickly as possible, which is important because the car is so much faster than you are. So you can save, a quarter of a second by getting it in slightly earlier. So my general strategy after I get in the car is a 3 count and then go past the dumpsters up and then go down a little bit and then ride the bottom of the track. Jump in the car as quickly as you can. 1, 2, 3, slow down a bit, up over the bombs, over that bomb, down, and hit the wall. And you want to hit this wall at something at about the 224 mark. Now, one of the reasons that wall exists is it wants to get rid of the car and Joe Rockhead, so this helicopter can spawn. And so this helicopter takes up all the enemy slots, and so it won't exist if anyone's on the screen. The basic idea is walk to the right, jump over the bullets if they're near you, jump over the bombs. My general advice is don't jump too early. Usually I get paranoid and I think I'm going to jump early. Wait, be patient, the bomb's going to show up, and just jump over the top of it. Note you can also blast the helicopter with a rocket if you so choose. It's not really an advantage. You just want to go right. And then when you're past the helicopter, this is when the brown coats and the dogs are going to start spawning. Same idea, jump over all the bullets. One thing I do with the dogs, rather than try to avoid them or jump them, is to simply shoot them and turn them into puppies, and then they run away. And so after a certain point, the dogs are no longer going to attack you. And then eventually you're going to run into the next car. And so at the 66.5 post, or in the sector map, you can see about halfway between the E and the B, your next car spawns. And so this one will always be here. This one's not dictated by RNG. Second car, we're going to jump in it. You can ride through a bunch of barrels, and then eventually you're going to see a grouping of 3 bombs and then a wall where you have to go down the bottom. There's going to be 1 mine here at the bottom, and then there's going to be 2 additional mines, one at 93.5 right there, and then one at 95.5. My general strategy on this section is to jump in the car, line my head up with the white line here, do a 3 count, 1, 2, 3, slow down, go down, up, avoid the bombs, go down to the bottom, and ride the bottom out for the entirety of the level. And note, you can run into Joe Rockhead here, but typically on the bottom I don't. And then towards the end, I jump towards the top to avoid the slowdown of him walking upwards. And so then I just go towards the door and leave the level. The world record, the time through this is about 3 minutes and 52 seconds. Tool-assisted speedrun is about 3 minutes and 49 seconds. On to Sunset Strip, the introduction of 2 new characters. This one is Bevanface, who throws dynamite at you. Relatively easy to avoid, you just jump over anytime they throw dynamite near you. Most of the time they miss regardless of jumping. The other character they introduce is Kinky Pinky, the clown with a knife. Only close range attacks. My general advice on Kinky Pinky is jump closer than you think you need to. The worst case is when you jump over them and they stab you in the back, and it slows you down quite a bit. So Kinky Pinky is one you want to jump over. The biggest concern on this level is actually none of these characters. Instead, it's a pink car that randomly appears. We don't know what dictates it, but essentially on the y-axis, right there, you can see the pink car that appears. From the moment that car appears to the time you have to jump over it or move up or down on the screen, you have about 1/3 of a second to respond. And if you don't, the car hits you and you jump in the air, you lose 2.5 bars of health, as well as about 1.25 seconds. So it's a non-trivial time loss when that car hits you. My general strategy on this level is jump over everything, jump over the clowns, jump over the bombs, keep my eyes glued to the right side of the screen so when the pink car appears, I can jump over and move out of the way. Note that the car comes back and lines up with you on the backwards pass. On the return pass, you have about 3/4 of a second to move out of the way. Note that you can jump over the car going right to left, but the car going left to right, you cannot jump over the car. So you have to move up or down at least 7 frames to get out of the way of the car. One thing to note, if you're really interested in saving time and you know you're going to die, it's actually quicker to die to the car than it is to a standard bullet death. And so at bullet death, you lay down on the ground, it takes about 1.6 seconds. The car hitting you only takes about 1.3 seconds, but it does cost you health that goes beyond your initial cycle. And so note, again, if you want to save time, 1/4 to 1/3 of a second, you can do it by getting hit by the car, but it comes at a cost of health. But ultimately, you want to get past the car, you want to avoid it, you can have more than one pink car appear, and ultimately you want to go in this last door on the end. Once in the door, we come across Joe Rockhead again. In this case, just jump over Joe. Up to 4 of them can appear on the screen. Get the silver safe card, exit the room, turn left, hit the silver safe card door, and you're out of the room. And so on the world record run, you can do this in about 4 minutes and 38 seconds. On tool-assisted run, I think the time is about 4 minutes and 35 seconds. Now we're on to Skyhigh's Nursery. So we're introduced to this character, which is Sergeant Skyhigh, who stays in their Y position on the axis, but when they spawn, they do spawn on your position. And so when they get off screen and respawn, you're going to want to be on a different position. So the idea again, go to the right, avoid getting shot, get through this door as quickly as possible. My general strategy in this room is immediately after going in the door, I'll go down slightly to avoid running into any of the plants, some of which are explosive. I also jump over the first 2 Sergeant Skyhighs and their bullets if I can. And then what I'm going to do is absorb bullets and just shoot one Skyhigh after another. It basically makes it so 3 or 4 will appear in sequence. And just based on statistics alone, some of those should drop a green card. And so the idea is just increase your probability of getting that green card by killing them as quickly as possible in a row. So move down slightly, jump over the second one, and then the third one I'm going to eat bullets, and I'm going to shoot, and he dropped a card immediately. But usually you need 2 or 3 of those Sergeant Skyhighs in a row, and then the second or third one is going to drop the green card. One thing to note is if you don't shoot them too far away, they won't drop a green card. So you need the proximity to you, otherwise they won't spawn a green card for some reason. And so somewhere in this region, you basically want to shoot them in close proximity, somewhere like this distance, and you can actually get the kill and get the green card to drop. And then you get the green card and go through the door. World record pace is somewhere around the 5:15 mark. The tool-assisted speedrun is about 5 minutes and 7 seconds. So this is the downtown area. Nothing particularly special about this level. It combines a bunch of mechanics we've seen in the past. It combines Hypo Man with Bevan Face with Kinky Pinky. Avoid the syringes, avoid the bombs, avoid the stabby clown. The biggest obstacle on this level is the pink car that appears again. And so the pink car that fixes on your Y position, you have about 1/3 of a second to jump and move out of the way. And then on the return pass, you have about 3/4 of a second to move out of the way. And so unlike the previous level, this pink car can appear, I think, up to 4 times if you're moving at full velocity to the right. And so non-trivial obstacle. To maximize your efficiency, there's a door at the top right corner of this level. So every time the car comes, you want to move up incrementally, and hopefully it only appears 1 or 2 times. And so again, the general idea, the jump, there is a car immediately. So I'm going to move out of the way again, 7 frames. And then just keep my eye fixed on the right side, jump over the obstacles, keep my eyes out for the pink car, avoid the pink car. It's going to pass again. So I'm going to try to stay here. Now if another pink car comes, I have to move down, but I'm going to keep my eyes open. Jump over everything, and then ultimately hit this door at the end of the level. Alright, after entering the door, we are in the KWAK lobby. This is where we're introduced to this character for the first time. This is a member of the HQ posse, or the blue guys. Obeys similar rules to the brown guys, where certain ones have lanes, but some of them are Y-axis wandering. They fire at a slightly faster rate, so it's really important that you don't want them following you in the same lane and try to avoid those bullets. So my general strategy in this particular level is find the sweet spot lane right here, somewhere on this white line or slightly above this white line, where none of the characters can hit you, so you're safe here, but you can shoot the characters that wander on that Y-axis. And so same idea as the first level, I can just walk through and kill any of the Y-axis wanderers, and if they drop bombs, that's great. But essentially you just walk to the right. You'll have to jump over those if they spawn behind you, but the rest of them, you can shoot them in front of you. And you already have the red key card, so jump up and hit the key card door. Red level 1, same idea, find that sweet spot just above the white line, shoot the Y wanderers, jump over the bombs. Dogs will appear, but you can actually jump over them when they're close to biting you. And then jump up, you already have the blue card, hit the blue card door, and you're through red level 1. Red level blue, same idea. Hit that sweet spot on the white line. Shoot any of the wanderers. Jump over the clowns with knives. Shoot the wanderer. Jump over. Shoot a wanderer. Jump over. You have the blue card. Through the blue card door. Now, if you hit this on a reasonable timeline, you'll close the door at about 7 minutes and 7 seconds. The task is about 7 minutes. Now we're on to Mr. Big's office. 2 dogs will appear immediately. Again, my general strategy is find this sweet spot, this lane where these 3 can't shoot you, and you can readily shoot the Y-axis characters. So you're going to wander the right. Jump over bullets, avoid anything you can. The dogs will appear every so often. I generally shoot them. They're kind of hard to avoid. And at the end of this level, you're going to see Mr. Big for the first time. So Mr. Big's going to appear in a wheelchair. So there's Mr. Big. You have to shoot Mr. Big with a rocket. And then when you shoot him, he's going to worm off screen, inchworm off screen like that. And then there's basically a waiting sequence. And so if you do this under normal procedures, there's a sequence where it's basically 2 brown dogs, 2 brown guys, and then 3 blue guys. If you just sit here and wait, he may never appear. And so you have to essentially shoot the brown guys, then shoot the blue guys, and then he'll come back. And so same thing, you got to rocket him. Once you rocket him, he inchworms off the screen. There's going to be 2 dogs, 2 brown guys, 2 blue guys. So you'll have to shoot them. In this case, blue guys. So there's the 2 brown dogs. Then you'll have 2 brown guys that you have to kill. Then you kill the blue guys, and then he'll respawn. Then you have to hit him for a 3rd time. And so that's the standard way of beating this level. But it turns out there's a loophole getting past Mr. Big without having to do the inchworm and that sequence of 2 brown dogs, 2 brown guys, 3 blue guys. And that's essentially by despawning him off screen. So the basic idea behind this despawn sequence is when you're somewhere about here on the screen where Mr. Big's portrait is in the top right, you're going to kill the guys on screen, the brown and the blue guys, and Wheelchair Big is going to appear. But rather than rocketing him anywhere, you're going to rocket him when he's on the left side of the screen. And when he's on the left side of the screen, after you fire the rocket, you're going to go to the right and screen scroll to the right and de-scroll him off the screen. And so you're essentially despawning his corpse from the screen. And what that does is it prevents his worm animation from occurring, but it also breaks the respawn sequence. So you no longer have to rely on the 2 dogs, 2 browns, 3 blues. Instead, under some circumstances, he will appear immediately, or he'll appear after you kill 1 blue guy. And so if you do that on the first two rocket cycles of Mr. Big, it can save you 15-20 seconds on the speed run. And so ultimately, hopefully, if everything goes well, it looks something like this. So blue guys, Mr. Big appears, rocket him off the left side, despawn him, go back the other way, he spawned again, rocket him again, despawn him, then you get the 3rd sequence of Big after maybe killing some blues, then you get a quick Mr. Big. He drops a gold card. You take the gold card at the door. Your goal time here on the world record time is about 8 minutes and 4 seconds. The task is something like 7 minutes and 53 seconds. So now we're into the inner sanctum and the last form of Mr. Big, which is a giant robotic head. And so in this fight, a few key things to note. He's going to shoot tongues at you, but if you're at the top of the screen, these tongues cannot hit you. And what you're going to do is a jump shot to hit him in the hat, and then 2 or 3 shots to the face to reveal his skeleton form. And so for the jump shot, you're basically going to have to tap B, and then while you're on the downswing at a specific moment, you're going to have to tap A, and that'll release a rocket that shoots him in the head. And so ultimately go to the top of the screen, jump rocket in the hat, and then you're going to do 2 or 3 shots to the face, and then it's going to reveal his skull. And so this is perhaps, anyone that played this when they were younger, this is perhaps the most annoying phase of this fight. And so here you can see he has 6 vertebrae, and essentially you need to shoot those out one at a time. But their hitboxes and their timing are very, very weird. And so basically, this skeletal phase, it has 10 different animation states, and it follows you on the y-axis. And so if you watch, anytime I move, he will follow me and line up with me every single time. And the key to this fight is essentially lining yourself up with him so you can shoot the vertebrae at certain times. So my general strategy in the skeleton fight is to walk to the right. Now the first two vertebrae are relatively easy. If you just turn around and line up and shoot them, this third vertebrae ends up being really, really hard. And so it turns out that no matter what, if he is aligned with you, you cannot blow that up. And so if I am here, I can shoot all day and I will never blow up that third vertebrae. And so what I do is this white line right here, either on this white line or slightly above this white line, basically his torso hitbox is bigger than yours. And so you're essentially messing up the Y alignment that he wants to do, and you're slightly above him. And so this is an area where on the downswing, now you can hit that fourth vertebrae, you can hit that third vertebrae, and then the last two, if you just move down a little bit, you can take care of those very quickly. So just to recap, jump, rocket him in the hat, get him in the face a few times with rockets, review the skeleton, go to the right, keep moving right, then on the downswing, turn around and shoot, get the first two vertebrae, line up here, you can get the next two, and then move down a little bit, get the final one, and then walk to the right. And so sometimes you can get lucky in terms of positioning after the first two that as you're going up, if you're still shooting, you might hit that third or fourth vertebrae. But this white line strategy is the most consistent we've found in terms of getting that fourth vertebrae. And so when he's leaning down in that animation, that's the most likely spot where you're going to get that third and fourth vertebrae. And then the last two are basically free. And so after you've blown them up, you're going to go to the right. You got the gold safe card from Mr. Big. And then we're going to go to the jackpot level, which is civil forfeiture the level, where you basically collect gold from Mr. Big's, penthouse. And then ultimately you're going to get to the key card door. And so the speed run stops as soon as you open the door. So as soon as you lose control of your character, which is right after touching this. And so the world record right now is 9 minutes and 4 seconds by Super Pitfro, at least at the time of posting this. Tool-assisted speedrun can do it in 8 minutes and 44 seconds. So a sub 9 minute is definitely possible. But if you follow the strategies in the speedrun, it's definitely reasonable to get a sub 9 minute and 30 second relatively consistently, and a sub 9 minute is definitely possible depending on the RNG and when the card drops occur. But yeah, that's it. That is my advice for NARC the speedrun. Again, the goal is sub 9 minute at some point. If somebody can figure out the RNG behind the key card drops, that would definitely help this run out a lot. I'd like to thank a few people, Halo for doing the tool-assisted speedrun, as well as reverse engineering large aspects of this game. That's where we learned the frame counting, as well as what dictates some of the spawns or what positioning on the screen make things like the car spawn. Other people, Super Pritfro, White Hat 64, Toad 22484, other speedrunners, Rot Dog. I've watched all the videos prior to starting to do this speedrun, so I really appreciate the community and what they learned prior to us learning it. But that information combined with this, hopefully someone can get a sub 9 minute speedrun. So I wish you all the best of luck. Enjoy NARC.